What if the most powerful crime in modern America wasn't hidden, but quietly accepted? For years, one name moved through the world's most powerful circles: presidents, billionaires, royalty, celebrities, without ever being stopped, not because no one knew, but because knowing wasn't enough. Tonight, this is not a conspiracy story. This is not gossip. This is not about accusations. This is about documents, timelines, power, and silence. The Epstein Files don't just raise questions about one man. They force America to confront something far more uncomfortable. What happens when justice depends on who you are? Watch closely. Because once you see how this system works, you can't unsee it. The Epstein Files. What they really are and why they terrified powerful people. A name in a document is not a crime, but in America, sometimes it's enough to destroy everything. For years, the phrase Epstein Files has carried a weight far heavier than paper. It's been whispered in courtrooms, argued on television, and debated endlessly online. Some believe these files expose the darkest secrets of the global elite. Others argue they've been misunderstood, misused, and weaponized. The truth sits somewhere in between, and understanding it requires separating evidence from assumption. What are the Epstein Files? The Epstein Files are not one single document. They are a collection of records that surfaced over decades, including court filings from civil lawsuits, depositions, and sworn testimonies, flight logs from Epstein's private jets, financial records, emails, and contact books sealed and later unsealed court documents. Most of these records emerged from civil cases, not criminal trials. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Being named in these files does not automatically mean criminal behavior. Courts themselves repeatedly clarify this point. Yet despite that, once a name appears, the public reaction is often immediate and unforgiving. The man at the center, Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy financier. With extraordinary access, he moved easily among politicians, billionaires, academics, celebrities, and royalty. In 2019, he was arrested on federal charges of sex trafficking of minors. Before the case could go to trial, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. His death was officially ruled a suicide, a ruling that immediately sparked widespread skepticism. With Epstein gone, attention shifted to the network around him, and that's where the files became explosive. The crime wasn't just what Epstein did, it was how close he was allowed to get to power. Why so many names appear? One of the most misunderstood aspects of the Epstein Files is why so many well-known people are mentioned. There are several reasons. Flight logs. Epstein owned private jets. Flight logs record who traveled, when, and where. They do not record what happened during those trips. Social and professional contact. Epstein donated money, attended events, and hosted gatherings. Many people interacted with him without any criminal involvement. Testimony. Mentions in lawsuits. Victims and witnesses sometimes named people they remembered seeing. Not accusing, just recalling. Courts allowed names to appear without determining guilt, especially in civil cases. Over time, the following individuals became publicly mentioned in Epstein-related documents or reporting. Bill Clinton, USA, former U.S. president, appeared in flight logs. No criminal charges, has denied wrongdoing. Donald Trump, USA, former U.S. president, social acquaintance in earlier years. No evidence tying him to Epstein's crimes. Prince Andrew, UK, British royal, named in a civil lawsuit, reached a financial settlement. No criminal conviction. Ghislaine Maxwell, UK, Epstein's close associate, convicted in U.S. court for sex trafficking-related crimes. Ehud Barak, Israel, former prime minister, reported business and social contact. No charges. Bill Richardson, USA, former governor and ambassador, mentioned in documents. No criminal case. George J. Mitchell, USA, former U.S. senator, mentioned in some records. No charges. Naomi Campbell, UK, supermodel, social association, reported. No allegations filed. Kevin Spacey, USA, actor, listed in flight logs. No charges related to Epstein. Chris Tucker, USA, comedian, flight log mention. No charges. Jean-Luc Brunel, France, modeling, agent, arrested in France on sex trafficking charges, died in custody. Each name carries a different level of relevance, and grouping them together without context is where misinformation begins. Why these files created fear? The fear was not just legal, it was reputational. In modern America, a criminal charge can be fought in court. A viral allegation can destroy a career overnight. 4. Public figures. Appearing in Epstein-related documents meant media scrutiny, loss of public trust, political consequences, corporate fallout. Even when no crime was proven, the association alone became damaging. The Epstein Files didn't answer every question. They did something more dangerous. They showed how power, access, and silence can exist in the same room. What the files reveal most clearly is not a single conspiracy, but a system where influence blurred boundaries, oversight failed, and accountability arrived far too late. And once those names entered the public record, there was no way to put them back. How political and royal names entered the Epstein Files when power appears in court documents. The question isn't always who committed a crime, it's who was close enough to never be questioned. Jeffrey Epstein didn't build his influence through secrecy alone. He built it through proximity to power. Presidents, prime ministers, diplomats, and royalty all existed in the same social orbit. Not because of crimes proven in court, but because Epstein positioned himself where influence naturally gathers. The Epstein Files reveal something uncomfortable. Access itself can be dangerous. Why political names matter so much? Political figures are held to a different standard, not just legally, but morally. When their names appear in documents tied to sex trafficking investigations, public reaction is immediate and intense. But again, context is everything. In civil cases especially, names can appear because someone traveled on a private plane, someone attended the same event, someone was recalled in testimony. That does not establish criminal behavior, but it does expose how close certain people were allowed to get. Bill Clinton, United States. His name appeared in flight logs. Records show multiple trips on Epstein as a private jet. Clinton has denied any wrongdoing. No criminal charges were filed against him. No evidence has ever been presented proving illegal activity. Yet the reputational impact was immediate. Why? His name matters. Clinton represents the highest level of political power. His presence in flight records raised questions about oversight, even without proof. Association alone reshaped public perception in modern politics. Perception can be as powerful as fact. The files didn't accuse presidents. They exposed how casually power moved through Epstein's world. Donald Trump, United States. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is often mentioned in public discussions, usually without clear context. Here's what is known. Trump and Epstein had social contact in the 1990s. Trump has stated he cut ties with Epstein years before the arrest. Trump does not appear in flight logs connected to Epstein's jets. No allegations or charges tie him to Epstein's crimes. Disputed that his name circulates frequently, showing how association can outlive evidence. This highlights a key reality of the Epstein Files. Once a name enters public conversation, facts often struggle to catch up. Prince Andrei, United Kingdom. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, represents the most legally complex case tied to Epstein's network. Named in a civil lawsuit filed by Virginia Jew, denied all allegations, reached a financial settlement without admitting guilt, no criminal conviction while legally resolved. The consequences were severe. Loss of royal duties, military titles, removed, permanent reputational damage. Prince Andrew's case demonstrates how civil law, public opinion, and institutional power collide. Ehud Barak, Israel. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak appeared in media reporting due to business interactions, visits to Epstein's properties, financial and professional contact. Barak has publicly denied wrongdoing, and no criminal charges exist. Still, his name underscores Epstein's international reach, extending beyond the United States into global politics. Bill Richardson and George J. Mitchell, United States. Two senior American political figures also appeared in documents. Bill Richardson, former governor of New Mexico, and U.S. Ambassador George J. Mitchell, former U.S. Senator. Both were mentioned in Epstein-related materials without charges or convictions. Their inclusion illustrates how civil testimony can name individuals without formal accusations. Political stature does not prevent reputational risk. Why these names created fear for politicians and royalty. The danger was not prison, it was public trust. The Epstein Files threatened political legacies, diplomatic credibility, historical reputation once documents were unsealed. Control over narrative was lost. And for public figures, that loss can be irreversible. The Epstein Files didn't prove that power committed crimes. They proved how rarely power is forced to explain itself. What emerges from these political and royal connections is not a single accusation, but a pattern. Unchecked access, blurred boundaries, and a system that allowed one man to stand dangerously close to the world's most influential figures. And if those names unsettled the public, the financial and celebrity names would raise even more questions. Follow the money. Billionaires, influence, and the financial shield around Epstein power opens doors. Money keeps them open, even when they should have been locked. If politics gave Jeffrey Epstein access, money gave him protection. Behind the jets, the mansions, and the private islands was a financial network that allowed Epstein to live far beyond what his official resume ever explained. The Epstein Files don't just raise questions about crime. They raise a more uncomfortable question. Who enabled him and why? The financial mystery around Epstein. Epstein was often described as a financier. Yet, he had no clearly defined investment firm. Few public records showed consistent clients. His wealth grew even after his 2008 conviction. That contradiction sits at the heart of the Epstein mystery. And this is where billionaires enter the story. Epstein didn't need many clients. He needed the right ones. Les Wexner, United States. Les Wexner, billionaire, founder of Victoria's Secret, is the most significant financial figure connected to Epstein. What's documented? Wexner gave Epstein extraordinary financial control. Epstein managed large portions of Wexner's wealth. Epstein lived rent-free in a Manhattan mansion owned by Wexner. Epstein had power of attorney over Wexner's finances at one point. After Epstein's arrest, Wexner stated he cut ties years earlier. He described Epstein as having misused trust. No criminal charges were filed against Wexner. Why this matters? Epstein's lifestyle was largely funded through this relationship without Wexner's trust. Epstein's reach would have been far smaller. Money didn't just support Epstein. It legitimized him. Leon Black, United States. Another major name is Leon Black, billionaire and co-founder of Apollo Global Management. Publicly known facts. Black paid Epstein tens of millions of dollars for tax and estate advice. Payments continued after Epstein's 2008 conviction. Black later stated Epstein provided legitimate services. An internal investigation later concluded no evidence of criminal involvement by Black. Epstein's role was financial consulting still. The association caused public backlash, leadership pressure. Black stepping down from Apollo's leadership. This shows how financial association alone can carry consequences, even without criminal findings. Glenn Dubin, United States. Glenn Dubin, a hedge fund billionaire, and his wife Eva Anderson Dubin were also publicly linked to Epstein. What's known? Long-standing social relationship. Epstein served as godfather to Dubin's child. Dubin has denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes. No charges were filed. But again, the pattern appears. Epstein embedded himself deeply. Financial trust turned into personal access. Why billionaires were vulnerable. Unlike politicians, billionaires face a different kind of risk. Shareholder trust, corporate reputation, investor confidence. When Epstein's files became public, stock prices were watched closely. Boards demanded answers. Brands distanced themselves quickly. The danger wasn't jail. It was collapse of credibility. The illusion of due diligence. One of the most disturbing lessons from the Epstein Files is how due diligence failed. Banks, law firms, and financial institutions continued servicing. Epstein flagged concerns but took limited action, prioritized profit over scrutiny. Epstein didn't hide in the shadows. He operated in plain sight, backed by money and respected names. The Epstein Files don't prove that billionaires committed crimes. They prove how wealth can delay accountability. When money moves quietly, oversight often moves slowly. And as long as Epstein's wealth remained unquestioned, his access remained unlimited. But money was only one side of the shield. The final layer, culture, fame, and silence, would prove just as powerful. Fame, culture, and the silence that protected Epstein. When power wears a suit, people listen. When it wears fame, people stay quiet. Jeffrey Epstein didn't just surround himself with politicians and billionaires. He surrounded himself with culture, celebrities, artists, academics, and public figures whose presence created a powerful illusion. If famous people are around him, it must be safe. That illusion turned out to be one of his strongest shields. Why celebrities mattered to Epstein? Epstein understood something critical about modern society. Fame disarms suspicion. When actors, musicians, professors, and cultural elites appeared at his homes, events, or on his private jet, staff didn't question, media didn't investigate, victims felt smaller, less believable. This doesn't mean celebrities committed crimes, but their presence normalized Epstein. You don't need everyone to protect you. You only need enough people to look away. Bill Clinton, United States former President Bill Clinton is one of the most publicly documented names in Epstein-related records. What is established? Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet multiple times. Trips were reportedly connected to philanthropy. Clinton has denied visiting Epstein's island. Clinton has denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes. No criminal charges or findings were made against Clinton. Why this matters culturally? A former U.S. president's presence gave Epstein enormous credibility. Staff, donors, and institutions assumed legitimacy. Power plus fame created silence. Prince Andrew, United Kingdom Prince Andrew, Duke of York, represents one of the most severe reputational consequences linked to Epstein. What's documented? Friendship with Epstein. Accusations by Virginia Jeffrey Civil case. Prince Andrew has denied wrongdoing. Civil settlement reached without admission of guilt. Consequences: removal from royal duties, military titles stripped, permanent damage to public image. This case shows how association alone can destroy status, even without criminal conviction. Former President Donald Trump is frequently mentioned due to past social interactions with Epstein. Photographs from public event, statements acknowledging knowing Epstein's socially important clarifications. Trump and Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. According to multiple reports, Trump has denied involvement in any crimes, no charges or findings against him. The Epstein Files highlight proximity, not guilt. Hollywood and cultural figures, various actors, musicians, and cultural elites appeared in Epstein's contact lists. Party photos, flight logs in limited cases. However, many names appear once or indirectly. Some individuals never met. Epstein personally presence does not equal participation. This is where public misunderstanding becomes dangerous. The files show connections, not convictions. Academics and intellectual cover. Epstein also invested heavily in universities' scientific research. High-profile intellectuals. Academia grants moral authority. Intellectual circles avoid scandal. Prestige discourages scrutiny. Some academics later admitted they accepted funding, they didn't ask questions, they regret the association again. Regret does not equal guilt, but silence helped. Media failure. The story that wasn't told. One of the most alarming aspects of Epstein's case is media hesitation. For years, journalists were pressured, stories were delayed or killed. Legal threats silenced reporting. Only after 2019 did sustained coverage explode. By then, Epstein was dead. Evidence was fragmented, accountability was weakened. The real risk if everything became public. Why do these names still matter? Because full transparency could destroy legacies, collapse institutions, trigger lawsuits, rewrite public history. The danger isn't prison for most of these figures. The danger is irreversible, reputational collapse. The Epstein Files don't expose a single villain. They expose a system where fame makes people untouchable. Celebrities didn't create Epstein, but culture protected him. And the most unsettling question remains unanswered. Who knew enough to stop him and chose not to? What the Epstein Files truly threaten: power, trust, and the system itself. The most dangerous thing in America isn't a secret. It's what happens when people finally demand the truth. By the time Jeffrey Epstein's name became global news, the damage had already been done. Not just to victims, but to trust. The Epstein Files are not explosive because they prove crimes by powerful people. They are explosive because they reveal how power protects itself. And that is far more unsettling. What the Epstein Files actually contain? The files include Court records, depositions, contact lists, flight logs, emails, and testimonies. Important distinction. A name appearing does not equal guilt. Mention does not mean involvement. Association does not mean participation. What these files show is proximity to power, not verdicts. And proximity alone is enough to shake institutions. If the public ever sees the full map of who protected whom, the system doesn't survive unchanged. Why? The system is at risk, not individuals. Most public figures mentioned face little legal risk today, due to lack of direct evidence, statutes of limitation, Epstein's death. Settlements without admissions, but the system itself faces danger. Because the files suggest, warning signs were ignored, complaints were buried, influence slowed. Justice reputation mattered more than protection. That is not a crime story. That is a governance failure. Terrible loss of public trust. If everything became fully public, the biggest consequence would be this. People would stop believing the system works equally. Courts, media, universities, charities, and political structures rely on public confidence. The Epstein case already cracked that confidence. Full transparency could shatter it. Institutions most at risk. 1. Media. Why were early investigations delayed? Why were stories softened? Who applied pressure? If answers emerge, journalism itself takes a credibility hit. 2. Politics. Why were powerful figures treated differently? Why were deals made? Why did accountability stall? Public anger doesn't target individuals. It targets legitimacy. 3. Elite networks, billionaires, foundations, think tanks, academic institutions. The files show how money and prestige open doors and close investigations. Why names still matter? Even without charges, people ask. If no one is being charged, why does this matter? Because influence leaves fingerprints, even without crimes. Association creates protection. Silence enables continuation. Respectability disarms. Scrutiny. The files expose patterns, not perpetrators. And patterns change how history is written. The danger of misinformation. There's another risk if these files spread without care. False accusations. That's why responsible storytelling matters. If the public treats mentions as proof, rumors as facts, suspicion as guilt, then justice collapses from the opposite side. The Epstein files demand discipline, not outrage. What this means for victims, for survivors, the stakes are different. They want recognition, accountability, structural change, not revenge, not conspiracy, not chaos. The greatest injustice would be turning their trauma into clickbait. Instead of reform, why this case will never truly end? Jeffrey Epstein is dead. The files are public. The names are known. Yet the case continues, because it exposed something permanent. Power doesn't need to break laws to be dangerous. It only needs to avoid consequences. That lesson doesn't expire. The Epstein files don't ask who committed crimes. They ask who decided some people didn't matter. This isn't about one man. It isn't about one list. It isn't even about names. It's about whether truth can exist in a system built on influence. And that question will haunt history long after the files stop trending. Jeffrey Epstein is gone. But the system that protected him is not. No court verdict can undo the damage. No apology can restore lost trust. And no silence can erase what these files revealed. This story was never about one list. It was about power. Who has it, who protects it, and who gets ignored. The real question isn't who was named. The real question is, who decided some lives were disposable? If this video made you think, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you question what you've been told, then the story did its job. Because the truth doesn't ask for permission. It waits until people are ready to look. Like the channel.